Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this little video that I found very particularly interesting. This is going to be a video once again about Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez, who, of course, overall, in my opinion, has a very big next decade ahead of him, or maybe not decade, because, of course, I believe he's about 32, 33 years old. So, he may not last necessarily a full another 10 years. Or he could. Who the hell knows? You never personally know. But it is going to be very interesting within these next 3 to 5 years to see how the career of Mr. Canelo Alvarez truly does pan out. And if you know overall my opinion about Canelo, you already know my opinion about him. I don't just believe that he's a great fighter. I believe that he's also an all-time great fighter. And I have certain people that dispute that. Listen, I've already stated this. If you have certain guys like Miguel Cotto or Oscar De La Hoya, or Juan Manuel Marquez, or Eric Morales, or Marco Antonio Barrera, or Sugar Shane Mosley. If you have those type of fighters as all-time great fighters, or at least as great fighters, in my opinion, Canelo has proven to be above those types of fighters. So it is what it is, or at least about a tier above them. So in my opinion, Canelo, once again, he's within my top 30 to top 35 fighters of all time. Whereas, Oscar De La Hoya or Miguel Cotto or Marquez or some of the other guys, Juan Manuel Marquez, some of those other guys, they probably would be within my top 50 or maybe top 60, 70, somewhere around there. I would really have to do a list to break it down. But at the end of the day, Canelo has proven, in my opinion, that he is probably a tier above them. At least I believe that he is. However, it is going to be very interesting, in my opinion, to see who Canelo Alvarez can beat and maybe who he can't beat within these next few years, because apparently from what I hear, there is a lot of mandatories being ordered from Mr. Canelo Alvarez, or ordered, excuse me, one of those fights being the winner of the Zach Parker versus John Ryder fight, which is, probably the fight that has the least appeal, but, from what I hear, it's likely that he could take that fight next year, and then after that fight, or whatever tune-up fight he's going to take, I believe personally that Canelo will take the Dimitri Bivol rematch, but we'll see overall what ends up happening. And whether he wins or loses the Dimitri Bivol rematch is going to be very interesting to see what he does after that. And if he will fight David Benavidez, Jamal Charlo, David Morrell, because apparently all those fighters maybe have been somewhat mandated to fight that of Canelo Alvarez, or at least the winner of David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant, the winner overall of, I believe, John Ryder versus Zach Parker. And then, of course, overall, you have Jamal Charlo waiting in the wings, who really isn't at 168, but is a fight that's very possible later on. And you also have a couple of other fights that are possible. David Morrell, yada, 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 yada. But it also is going to depend on, in my opinion, how Canelo Alvarez, is he successful against Dimitri Bivol or is he not? Because that could completely change. If Canelo Alvarez ends up beating Dimitri Bivol, he might overall vacate the belts. He might overall try to face Artur Beterbiev after that. But if he does lose to Dimitri Bivol, in my opinion, which in my opinion right now I would say is more likely, because I just think combined with the size and overall combined with the skill set, you're talking about two A-grade level fighters, and Bivol is very highly intelligent and very all-around very skilled. And on top of that, he's about 2 or at least 1.5 weight classes bigger than that of Canelo Alvarez, especially when you talk about in terms of the height and the reach and the length. He just is. And he's a little bit heavier, I believe, than Canelo. So, excuse me. So it is what it is. But overall, if Canelo does end up losing the Dimitri Bivol rematch, I don't see another option. In my opinion, Canelo, he's going to have to go back down to 168. And if he wants to remain, in my opinion, overall, as the all-time great fighter that I truly believe that he is going to have to defeat the guys of David Benavidez's ilk, also Jamal Charlo, David Morrell, and a few of the other ones, maybe Demetrius Bubba Andrade, and a few other ones that maybe I'm not mentioning. And it will be very interesting to see, is Canelo Alvarez truly overall above the Oscar De La Hoyas? Is he above the Juan Manuel Marquez's? Is he above the Miguel Cotto's, the overall Eric Morales's, and the Marco Antonio Barrera's? Well, I would say Morales and Barrera, they're probably a league even below those guys. But Cotto, Oscar De La Hoya, and, overall Sugar Shane Mosley, those are 3 fighters, in my opinion, that I pretty much all have within the same league. I have Canelo, in my opinion, overall, a league above those guys. But the reason why Sugar Shane Mosley, Miguel Cotto, and Oscar De La Hoya are a league below Canelo is because Canelo so far has won 99% of the big A-grade fights within his career. But Sugar Shane Mosley, Oscar De La Hoya, and also Miguel Cotto, at least for a certain amount of time, it looked like that was going to happen for them too. So the big question is about Canelo is this. If he does end up losing to Dimitri Bivol, where does his career go from there? And can he beat David Benavidez, David Morrell, Jamal Charlo? Will he be the same fighter? And all in all, what will impact his legacy? We'll see what happens. But anyways, I just thought that I would talk about it. Dante is going to tune in here. We all know that Dante lusts over talking about Canelo Alvarez topics. So anyways, let's tune in.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So the walls continue to close in faster and faster on Canelo. The news gets worse and worse for him almost every day now. Canelo Alvarez's fate was sealed.
You know, Dante talks about Canelo Alvarez overall like the United States Marines were talking about Osama bin Laden overall before he got caught. Now, of course, there's certain people that don't believe he got caught. Listen, that's your business. But that's how Dante acts with Canelo Alvarez. He almost acts like, you know, Canelo Alvarez is like a full-on terrorist, and he's like waiting to get him. You know, it's like one of those scenes that you see at the end of the movie or something. Like, for those of you that have ever watched The Green Mile, now, of course, the character in that movie, I believe, played by Michael Clark Duncan, or whatever the hell his name is, that character actually was truly innocent. But, of course, you know, overall, you know, in the movie, a lot of people truly believe that, I believe that he murdered 2 little girls. So, of course, they wanted to see him die. That's how Dante overall acts with Canelo. If Canelo does end up losing these next couple fights, this dude overall is going to be smiling from ear to ear. He hates Canelo Alvarez with such a fervent passion. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
The moment he was forced to either take the tough DAZN deal or the tough PBC deal. The PBC deal included either a fight with Jamal Charlo and David Benavidez or a fight with Jamal Charlo and Errol Spence. And of course, the DAZN deal included Bivol. Now, originally,
I don't think that Jamal Charlo, in my opinion, at least against the Canelo Alvarez that is at his best, I don't think that Jamal Charlo really has a legitimate chance. He's just way too flawed. And that doesn't mean that it's not a decent fight. It is. But I think that he's really flawed. I just don't see it happening. Unless Canelo is clearly a lesser version of himself, of what he used to be. And some people might say, oh, well, are you making excuses for Canelo? No, it's not really making an excuse. It's just that I have to really see what Canelo Alvarez is doing after the Dimitri Bivol fight. Because right now, Canelo, I believe, is pretty much at the best point in his career. But these next few years might completely reshape about how we remember Canelo Alvarez. After these next few years, he might be a top 10 fighter of all time. He might be a top 40 fighter of all time. So we'll see what happens.
Canelo, he didn't want to fight.
And as for Errol Spence Jr., I think that Errol Spence is a great fighter, but he's just way too small for Canelo. Canelo was way too skilled and way too big for Errol Spence Jr. That pretty much overall would be like a Dimitri Bivol versus Canelo Alvarez fight, except even worse.
Any of those guys. He wanted to fight Macaboo, but DAZN wouldn't pay for that fight because they knew no one would watch it. So the moment Canelo took the Bivol fight, that was the beginning of the end for his career. He got dominated by...
And this is what Dante keeps saying. Why do they keep saying this about Canelo Alvarez? Because once again, they want the end for Canelo Alvarez. I've been stating this now for the past few years. They're looking at overall the end of Canelo Alvarez, or they're hoping that they're looking at the end. Now, is it the end for Canelo? We'll see. Time will tell. It's possible. If he doesn't win the Dimitri Bivol fight, and if he ends up losing to Charlo and a couple of these other guys, then yes, it pretty much will be the end of Canelo Alvarez. But there is no guarantee. We'll have to see overall what happens. Canelo Alvarez, once again, we're going to see how truly great that he is. I don't think there's any doubt about it that Canelo is an all-time great fighter, or that he's a great fighter. But these next few years are really going to determine how great he actually is.
And now he's been pressured to take the rematch. Even if Canelo completely walks away from the Bivol rematch, now he has to deal with the WBC that just ordered him to fight the winner of David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant. The WBC president, he ordered...
Yeah, which, once again, Dante, for whatever reason, and a certain amount of these other channels claim is such a humongous fight. Why would you claim that it's a humongous fight if, once again, you allegedly believe that Caleb Plant is this weak European fighter? Once again, people truly tell you their actual opinions overall, just in different terms.
That fight at the WBC convention. But guess what? Now the WBA's convention is coming up in December. And there's a Spanish reporter who used to work with ESPN, and he has a good relationship with the WBA president. The reporter's name is Bernardo Pilati. Now, I have a friend who follows my channel, and he sends me all of the news from Spanish reporters, and he translates everything for me. And he sent me this story. And once again, I pay attention to stories like this because not only is this guy a reporter, but he has a very close relationship, once again, with the WBA president. He does a lot of exclusive interviews with the WBA president. And he's stating on his channel, he firmly believes that the WBA is going to order Canelo Alvarez to fight David Morrell in December at the WBA convention to consolidate.
That'd be a very particularly interesting fight, but I think that the best thing for David Morrell, at least in my opinion, would be to try and fight overall some other very decent contenders. I think that if Canelo does show up in decent shape, or if he's clearly still the A-grade fighter, even after a possible loss to Dimitri Bivol, I don't think that, in my opinion, that it would be best to just throw him in there with Canelo immediately. Because I don't even think David Morrell has 15 fights on his record. And that doesn't always mean everything, but against a fighter like Canelo, it very well does.
The WBA belt. For those of you guys who don't know by now, the WBA, their plan was to consolidate all of the belts. So there's no longer a super WBA champion and a regular champion. This is the main reason why Gervonta Tank Davis fought Rolly Romero. That's just one of the many examples. So it would obviously make...
Yes, that man who couldn't box with a shit. Anyway.
...sense for the WBA to order this fight at the convention, not to mention there's also a very good chance that David Morrell's representatives, they can show up at the convention and demand the fight to be ordered. Just like David Benavidez's promoter showed up at the WBC convention to demand the mandatory spot to fight Canelo Alvarez next. Listen, you guys always hear me say it. We all know that the sport of boxing is the wild, wild west of sports. And we already know if there was no corruption in the sport, then David Benavidez and David Morrell, they would have already been Canelo Alvarez's mandatories. Just like Avni Yildirim, he became Canelo Alvarez's mandatory right away, and he didn't have to go to a WBC convention and protest to get the mandatory spot. And that's obviously because he never asked for the fight. It was Canelo that demanded the fight. Do you guys see how Jermell Charlo has all of his mandatories lined up right now? It was supposed to be like this for Canelo a while ago. But there's a very good chance that they're going to start ordering these fights now. I truly believe...
Well, once again, it's going to be very interesting to see what Canelo Alvarez does within these next few years. But the only thing overall that Dante always tries to spew, that always gets on my nerves, is that, yes, Canelo overall has been that he's given up certain mandatories. But let's not sit here overall and act like Canelo's just fought shit fighters. You know, like Canelo overall, when he gave up a mandatory, you can claim that overall that you probably wanted to see that fight. But Canelo, once again, within the past 5 years, he's fought guys like Golovkin, Danny Jacobs, Sergey Kovalev, Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders. He's fought guys, I believe, like Lara. He's fought a bunch of guys. Well, actually, no, Lara actually was quite a while ago now that I think about it. Probably like 8 years ago, actually. But, you know, he's fought quite a bit of guys within the past several years.
The fact that the WBC has ordered Canelo to do the right thing and fight his mandatory, that's going to put more pressure on the WBA to do the exact same thing. Which means if they do, Canelo Alvarez is going to continue to break his own record of vacating belts. He's already vacated belts on 3 occasions. And if these organizations do their jobs and force Canelo to fight his mandatories, I can almost guarantee you he's going to be vacating a 4th time. The fact that Canelo Alvarez is stalling...
It's very possible that he might vacate depending on what Canelo Alvarez's plans are. But I think that if Canelo loses the Dimitri Bivol rematch, I don't think that he's going to really see another way, at least in my opinion. He more than likely is going to try to defend his belts at 168 pounds. But it'll be very interesting.
To take the Bivol fight. Now he's talking about he's going to take it in September, which no one believes he's going to take that fight. That's just going to...
Well, I believe that he's going to take that fight, but we all know why you're saying the things that you are, Dante. It is what it is. Once again, this dude hates Canelo Alvarez so much. I don't think I've ever seen a channel, even Aki TV and some of these other guys. I think Dante might hate Canelo Alvarez the worst out of any other channel that I've personally ever seen. This motherfucker acts like he banged his wife or something.
Even more pressure on Canelo to defend his titles at 168. If the WBA and the WBC are following the rules, then next year, for sure, Canelo Alvarez will have 2 mandatories, and that will be David Morrell and David Benavidez.
Yes, and if he ends up losing to Dimitri Bivol, there's going to be no more excuses anymore for Canelo Alvarez. And I like Canelo Alvarez quite a bit. And in my opinion, overall, do I believe that he's really a cherry picker? No, I don't. I've never believed that about Canelo Alvarez. However, once again, what I will say is this. If you end up losing to Dimitri Bivol, or if you want to keep the belt at 168 pounds, after the Dimitri Bivol fight, there is no way around it. You're going to have to at least face one of those guys in either David Benavidez or David Morrell or whoever the mandatories might be.
It's that Canelo Alvarez loses hands down. But it's actually all 4 of them that you guys see on the screen right now that beats Canelo Alvarez hands down. I noticed when I made Canelo Alvarez...
Well, you know what, Dante? Let's see if you keep that same prediction when the fights are apparently announced. Because the last time that you said that, overall, when Dimitri Bivol versus Canelo was announced, you were singing a different tune. And you were especially singing a different tune when Jamal Charlo overall and Canelo Alvarez was apparently going to be announced. So it is what it is. We all know Dante a lot of times is full of shit. And this is why a lot of the times I can't take what he says seriously.
Alvarez videos. Canelo Alvarez fans, they fill up the comment section, but they never say they want to see Canelo fight any of these guys. Because even they know deep down that Canelo Alvarez is too flawed of a fighter to beat any of these guys.
I need to know overall what flaws Dante is really seeing from Canelo Alvarez. Because now that I really think about it, what flaws overall does Dante really ever bring up about Canelo Alvarez? I mean, I think he brings up his defense, but listen, for anyone who knows shit about boxing, we all know that Canelo Alvarez has very stout defense. It's very, very great defense. The only problem that I would really say about Canelo is his gas tank and I guess his feet. That's really about it. You know, and in certain times he's improved on that, but once again, we'll see what happens.
Now listen, guys, there is a difference from a fighter who's just avoiding one fighter in particular, but he takes on all the other tough challenges, right? When it comes to Canelo Alvarez, the difference is he's avoiding all of the tough competition.
Oh, yes, Canelo Alvarez, by beating champion after champion after champion, yes, he certainly has avoided all the top contenders. In Danny Jacobson and Gennady Golovkin and in Saunders and in Caleb Plant. Dante is such a fucking idiot, man. but this is the same guy that claims that Gervonta Tank Davis is facing all the dangerous contenders. Like, what are you talking about? Now, once again, if you can claim on the know that there are certain fights that have not happened yet that you claim to want to see, there's no problem with that. You can claim that the Jamal Charlo, David Benavidez, and overall, you know, the Demetrius Bubble Andrade fights, that those are fights that Canelo, you know, either A, you know, did not seem interested in, or, you know, there are certain people that would allege that he avoided those fights, or maybe he was interested in something else. I don't really have a problem with that, but claiming that he avoids all the top competition, no, if you know shit about boxing, you know that that's not the case. Someone who avoids all the top competition is someone like a Mikey Garcia or Gervonta Tank Davis.
The smoke. And the only time he's taking the tough challenges is if he is forced to. Just like...
Oh, stop, dude. No one forced him to face Dimitri Bivol. No one forced him overall to face overall that is Sergey Kovalev or, you know, some of these other guys at Danny Jacobs. Just shut up, dude. And once again, this dude is so obnoxious.
He was forced to take the Bivol fight.
He wasn't forced to take the Bivol fight at all. People overall were on his ass about apparently facing Jamal Charlo and some of these other guys. Now, one could say, well, that's why he fought Bivol, because he didn't want to face those guys. The reason why Canelo fought Bivol is because, once again, he's in the middle of seeing what his peak potential is going to be at. And that's why he wanted to go after Bivol, because he wanted to unify 175.
Before that Bivol fight, Canelo, he hadn't fought any tough, dangerous opponents in 4 years. And
oh, please, dude, just stop.
Avoiding the best competition for years and years and years, it just builds up like debt. The longer you go without paying your debt, the worse it gets. You have to pay more interest. It messes up your credit, and then it gets so bad to where you can't even pay it all off because you waited so long to start paying on it. Well, Canelo Alvarez's debt has definitely piled up, and he will most likely be forced to deal with at least one of these debt collectors really soon. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
But anyways, that's really about it for this video. I just thought that I would talk about that because that'd be very particularly interesting. I tell you what, man, Dante overall, I don't think I've ever seen a bigger hater of Canelo Alvarez than DontesBoxingNation. This dude overall acts like Canelo committed 9/11 or some shit. I gotta tell you what, overall, he better hope that Canelo Alvarez loses his next couple fights. You know, he's going to be overall basically on the commentator's table, or he's going to be overall, you know, on his channel. We finally got him. We finally got the son of a bitch. He's finally done. He's finally over. Just like overall how the USA stated when Osama bin Laden got caught. Oh, man. Anyways, that's pretty much about it overall for this video. I just thought that I would review that. But anyways, well, it's going to be very interesting once again to see what happens with Mr. Canelo Alvarez. I'm going to be very intrigued to see what he's able to do over these next couple of years. And I think that the Jamal Charlo, David Benavidez fights, I think that those fights are pretty much overall that it's not debatable that those fights are going to happen within the next couple of years at the very least. It seems overall next year that he's going to have a tune-up right after his hand surgery. And then, of course, it seems that he's going to face Dimitri Bivol, you know. And, of course, that is a fight that Canelo Alvarez is going to have to try to win, you know, of course, which obviously he's going to try to do. But we'll see what happens. It'll be very interesting. Once again, these next few years will prove Canelo Alvarez overall. You know, I think that he's always going to be an all-time great fighter because of what he accomplished. But is he eventually going to climb into that top 20 to top 10 range? Or overall, will he possibly even be a little bit lowered? You know, will he be, my question is, will he be in the Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, maybe even possibly Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, and, you know, Rocky Marciano level? And, you know, not all those guys I'm necessarily putting in any particular order, but those are all guys that could be debated within my top 10 or top 20. You know, right now, once again, I have him on the Andre Ward, Joe Calzaghe level. That's where I have him, you know. But if he ends up losing a few more fights within these next few years, who knows? We might have to put him on the same level as a Sugar Shane Mosley, Amigo, Cotto, and an Oscar De La Hoya, or somewhere around there. So we'll see what happens there. But anyways, that's really about it for today. I just thought that I would talk about that. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Mr. Canelo Alvarez within these next few remaining years. But it's going to be very interesting. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.